So with this partnership with Caseware, what does success look like? Well, AICPA is really looking to move the category forward. They want to transform the audit, and that is ultimately success. Not so much commercial success in terms of a software product, although that's a great outcome if that happens as well. But really, the intent behind all of this is to drive the audit profession forward and embrace the new technologies and tools that are going to be created, and hopefully spawn and inspire other software development to occur that will accelerate that even beyond the partnership with Caseware. The initial foray into this was a tool called PCR, Prep, Comp, and Review, that was really designed, again, at the left end of that continuum of automation, really rules-based, and focused on workflow automation, taking some of the mundane work out of Prep, Comp, and Review engagements and making them more efficient. It's not yet focused on any sort of whiz-bang analytics, although that's certainly on the roadmap and a possibility in the future. The real key is focusing again on how can we have a high impact, easy to use tool that makes workflow faster, and that's what this has done. And there are a number of primarily smaller firms that have jumped on board and are currently using this tool. The question you might ask is, well, why did the AICPA start there? Why not start the other way and do the audit tool first? Well, there are a few reasons, but most of it boils down to the innovator's dilemma that was articulated by Clayton Christensen. And I think this has lessons for all of us as we're thinking about how do we change some of the services that we offer to our clients in ways that will allow us to improve margins and deliver greater value. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that you've got to start at the bottom end of the market sometimes. Sometimes in the part of the market that's less attractive. So when AICPA and Caseware looked at where to run the pilot, it was Prep, Comp, and Review, not over on the audit side where the requirements are more complex. We're going to come back to this particular point a little bit later in the presentation because it's critical as you think about how you develop your offerings and where you should start. Let's talk bookkeeping automation for a minute. So we've talked audit. What about client accounting services? Well, there's actually quite a number of companies. I haven't even thrown all of the logos up here. These are a few of the more visible ones, but all of them are still relatively small. One of these was acquired this past year by KPMG, you'll notice. So there's a lot of movement and noise in this particular space. But most of these would be characterized, probably with the possible exception of ZipBooks, as actually competitive to traditional CPA services. In other words, they're offering something that is designed to replace what CPAs or CPA firms may have traditionally provided to their clients. And it's interesting that that's where we're seeing a lot of the innovation occur in the bookkeeping space is in these types of areas. The financial incentive isn't necessarily there for all of these providers to create tools for CPAs, and there's good reason for that. CPAs bring in billions of dollars of revenue each year through the services that we provide, and so for us there's a huge financial incentive. But the problem is there isn't a significant financial incentive for those that sell tools to CPAs because that's a much smaller market. Now, where there is a financial incentive is when the customer becomes the product. And if you peel back the business models of some of these providers out there that are offering automated bookkeeping services, what you're going to find is that there's a lot there that is actually focused on this. It's being able to get access to all of that data and what that's worth, all of the other things that can be potentially sold to those customers, all of the things that are gained by having access to that kind of volume of transaction level data could be really, really valuable. And so there's huge incentives for that type of a business model, not so much for selling software tools to CPAs. But the financial incentives for firms are massive. As I said, we're talking billions of dollars of revenue into firms, and the opportunity to drive that innovation really lies with firms and not so much with the software companies. Because again, the CPA market is a relatively small market, and so the firms actually have the bigger incentive. So we need to be a part of, as practitioners, of driving that innovation in the service offerings and not just waiting around for somebody else to innovate, because again, their financial incentive is based on access to the data, not so much selling software. So it's really not about the technology for us. It's about thinking differently. Digital transformation is not about technology. It's about people, and it's about change management. Can you spot the gosling in this picture? This is a building here just south of Salt Lake City. It's the Aetna building located in Sandy, and it's got up on the 4th story of this building for a period of years, a mother goose would lay her eggs. It's a nice protected spot for the nest, tough for raccoons or other predators to get up there and bother them. The challenge is getting the goslings down off of that 4th floor nesting spot once the eggs have hatched. And so each year the mother goose would sit down at the bottom of this building and call out to the goslings and convince them to jump off of the building. Digital transformation is about getting people to make that leap. How do we get them to make that leap? To trust that they're gonna roll when they hit the bottom and not break a leg or anything. Automation itself is not something new. In fact, it's been going on now for many years, and you'll see everything from Henry Ford's assembly line on up to the transformation of the U.S. auto industry that occurred during the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. If I were to show you a picture of what those manufacturing facilities look like, it's night and day different. So it's not anything new, but this time the pace of change could surprise us. So automation isn't something new, and let's talk about it in the context of our profession. So one of the partners here at my firm has worked on the same audit engagement for 25 years. And he made this comment to me a year or so ago, and I thought it was really interesting. He's been serving this same client, whose, by the way, scope of operations have increased dramatically over that 25-year run. And that audit used to take 3,000 hours. And this would be for a company whose revenues would have been measured at that time in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And today, that audit takes 1,000 hours. And this would be for a company whose revenues today would be measured in the billions of dollars. So that transformation took 25 years. It can be dangerous for someone like me or anyone to say that this time it's somehow different, because we've been dealing with automation throughout the years, but this time it may not be that different. It's just the pace of some of the change might surprise us. How quickly some of this occurs could really surprise us. So rather than 25 years to go from a 3,000 hour audit to a 1,000 hour audit, we may see some things that change much more dramatically. The good news is that we don't have to do this ourselves. We're business owners. You're a business owner. Hire someone. Find someone with skill sets different than your own. For me to believe that I've got all of the answers to the kind of technology automation that can be done and can get in on a detailed level and push all the right buttons to make that happen, that's quite naive on my part. But we're owners and we can hire someone. And if we can't hire someone, then train them. We've currently got a person here at our firm who's getting a master's degree in machine learning. And he's bright and capable and has an incredible future for himself here at the firm and his career. We should encourage more of that. We got to find people who have a desire to learn there and invest in them and give them a chance to really develop those skills. The ICPA offers some data analytics learning programs. They've got a 40-hour course, a certificate program that's really, really good if you have a staff person or someone at, say, the 1 to 10-year level that you wanted to give a real good dose of analytics, data analytics skills. And there's not just there's lots of other programs that you could invest in. So the key is, this isn't something we necessarily have to do, but we've got to be willing to find the people or invest in those who can do it. Let's give you a practical application example of how this can work and how fast some of these changes might hit us. So let's take some of those bookkeeping tools that I referenced earlier that have some machine learning built into them and that allow for pulling transactions in mass across from the bank feed. This isn't just QuickBooks importing transactions. This is using some machine learning smarts and algorithms to actually post those transactions. And over time, as the human in the loop helps them understand what's going on with those transactions, it gives those algorithms even greater accuracy. So over time, we get higher and higher probabilities that the machine or the bot is coding those transactions properly as they flow across from the data source, in this case the bank feed. So let's take a real client example, franchise business. Names have been changed to protect the innocent, but picture any franchise business, retail franchise business that you can think of. Lots and lots of small transactions that happen over time. And we, in one instance, were able to take the cost of accounting per location from $1,000 to $100 in a period of about 6 weeks using some of these machine learning algorithms. Now, that's not to say that this is the result that we'll see in every single case. There are things about a retail food franchise concept that lend itself really well to this type of automation. But this isn't the only example. I could give you examples in e-commerce. I could give you examples in manufacturing and distribution. I could give you examples in construction, where these types of automation tools can cut significant time out of the process in the system and free people up to do much higher value activities. In this particular case, there wasn't a need for the company to let people go or anything else. Now the people that they had, instead of spending their time reconciling transactions at a detailed level, could focus their efforts on things that would, such as loss prevention, things like auditing, looking for errors or anomalies in what was going on. So you could take those people and redeploy them in much more productive ways that could contribute significantly more value to the overall enterprise and its goals. In order to do this, you've got to follow the Silicon Valley maxim that says start with stuff that doesn't scale first. When Airbnb first started, you had a couple of guys in San Francisco who had an idea, and it wasn't a very scalable idea. It was, let's see if we can rent out spare rooms and extra couch space or whatever the case is for people living in places like New York. And they happened to have a concentration of people that were willing to do this in New York, and they got some great advice from one of their investors. He said, get on a plane, go to New York, sit in their living room, and figure out what's going on with those customers. Why is it that they're willing to sleep on somebody's sofa? And what is it about that interaction that's working? Because they weren't making any money at the time. And so they did. They get on a plane and they sit in somebody's living room and have them talk to them about what the experience is of inviting a perfect stranger into their home and having them spend the night on their couch, and what that was all about. And they, through that process, gained great insights into how they could build a business that would ultimately scale. At CPA firms, something that doesn't scale is code for low realization. This is stuff that the first couple of times you do it, you're not going to make a lot of money on. Why? Well, because sometimes you've got to spend time building something that will have future value before you get too caught up in building something that or in delivering service that has current value. This is investment for the long term. This is building your balance sheet, not necessarily your current income statement. We have an offering we've provided to a number of clients now, where we built a data analytics tool inside of Excel with some other analytics things attached to it that go a little bit beyond Excel, but just think of it as an Excel spreadsheet that we invested hundreds of hours in developing. Now we can use that tool and leverage it to help other clients, and it's incredibly valuable to those clients, and we can price it accordingly because it helps them gain tremendous new insight into what their business is doing. But we had to spend time up front investing in the development. So sometimes you've got to do stuff that doesn't scale first.